Ruth Mendez was the kind of woman who rarely made headlines in life. She was 32, a legal assistant in El Paso, Texas, with a neat apartment, a fixed routine, and a reputation for being quietly dependable. She didn't date much, rarely drank, and kept her social circle small. On the night of March 9, 2013, Ruth stayed late at the law firm where she worked, reviewing files for a case that had a looming deadline. Her last confirmed sighting was at 10:47 p.m., when she picked up a coffee from a 24-hour gas station just a few blocks from her home, the Hollow Creek Residences. At 11:17 p.m., surveillance footage captured Ruth entering the building lobby. She walked quickly, glancing behind her twice, clutching her oversized leather purse tightly. Her access card logged her entry, and then she disappeared into the elevator. What happened over the next 2 minutes would become one of the most unnerving unsolved cases in recent memory. The footage from inside the elevator begins like any other. Ruth steps in, turns to press a floor button, but instead, she hits multiple floors in rapid succession. 3, 5, and 9. Then she repeatedly stabs the door open button. She doesn't stand in the center like most people do. Instead, she moves to the back left corner, half hidden in the camera's frame. She peeks toward the hallway as the doors attempt to close, then pop back open. Her mouth moves, but no sound is heard. She flattens herself against the wall as if trying to disappear. The doors never close, the elevator never moves, and Ruth Mendez never walks out. When police arrived the next morning, after Ruth failed to show up for work and her supervisor grew concerned, her car was found parked outside the building. Her purse, keys, and wallet were in her apartment, untouched. Her bed was made. The door was locked from the inside, but Ruth was gone. Investigators pored over every second of security footage from the lobby, elevator, stairwells, and every floor. Nothing. The elevator logs showed no floor changes between 11:17 p.m. and 11:46 p.m., when another resident used it. No one entered or exited. No maintenance records showed malfunctions. There were no blind spots, and yet Ruth had vanished. The building's blueprints were reviewed, and a full search was conducted, from basement maintenance corridors to roof access panels. No signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no fingerprints out of place. As the case made the local news, internet sleuths quickly picked it up. Theories exploded. Some pointed to a former maintenance worker who had once been reported for stalking a female resident. He was quietly fired months earlier and hadn't been seen since. Police attempted to track him down but were unsuccessful. He had vanished as well. Others believed Ruth had suffered a psychological break. But family and friends denied any history of mental illness, and her toxicology results were clean. The strangest theory suggested she had accessed a sealed-off phantom floor, an old service level built in the 1970s and supposedly closed off in the early 2000s. Rumors online suggested a specific button sequence could unlock it. Police found no credible evidence of this, but urban legends don't care about proof. There was also talk of elevator anomalies, a handful of global cases eerily similar to Ruth's. A person enters alone, behaves erratically, and then disappears without explanation. The most famous among them was the 2013 disappearance of Elisa Lam in Los Angeles, which had occurred just 1 month before Ruth vanished. The parallels were hard to ignore. Years passed. The case went cold. Ruth Mendez was declared legally dead in 2020. Her family held a small memorial service, but without a body, the questions never stopped haunting them. And just when time threatened to bury her story completely, something resurfaced. In late 2018, a hotel clerk in Albuquerque, New Mexico, reported something strange to local police. A woman had ridden up to the 6th floor in the building's elevator around midnight. She looked disoriented, frightened. Even, the clerk only noticed because she'd left behind a red scarf wedged in the door. Security footage was reviewed. The woman's face was partially obscured by her hair, but her build, her movements, even the purse slung over her shoulder, matched Ruth Mendez. Most chillingly, she was wearing the same blue blazer Ruth had last been seen in. The camera flickered, then the screen cut to black. The footage was sent to El Paso authorities. They ran comparisons but couldn't confirm a match. The woman was never seen again. The hotel had no record of her checking in. The room she appeared to exit from was vacant. And just like before, the elevator never moved. The footage ended abruptly, not with a clean cut, but with static, as if something had physically disrupted the recording. Technicians reviewed the timestamp, only to find that 3 full minutes had been overwritten with digital noise. When forensic analysts examined the security system's logs, they found nothing abnormal. No tampering, no power loss, no scheduled maintenance. Just a gap, as if those minutes had simply ceased to exist. El Paso detectives reopened the Mendez file quietly, contacting the Albuquerque hotel and obtaining the original hard drives. Facial recognition software returned a 72% match. Not conclusive, but far too close to ignore. And then came a second report. A janitor working night shift at a different hotel, this time in Flagstaff, Arizona, claimed to have seen the same woman standing alone in an elevator around 3 a.m. She didn't blink, he said. She was facing the corner. The elevator doors opened and she didn't step out. When investigators pulled footage from that incident, the woman was again only visible for a few seconds before the screen flickered and distorted. Her face was never fully shown, but the bag over her shoulder was the same make, same model. Limited run. Only a few hundred sold, one of them registered to Ruth Mendez in 2012. The FBI quietly flagged the sightings, but without a verified identity or crime, there was little they could do. Rumors began to spread online that Ruth Mendez hadn't vanished, but was trapped. Not in a place, but in some kind of loop, showing up in elevators across the Southwest, always alone, always silent, always just out of reach. In late 2021, a Reddit user posted a thread titled, "I rode the elevator with Ruth Mendez." The post was taken down within hours, but screenshots circulated. The user described staying in a renovated hotel in Santa Fe and riding the elevator with a woman who pressed no buttons and avoided eye contact. She looked terrified, they wrote, and when she finally turned toward me, she mouthed something. Couldn't hear it. I thought it was help, but now I'm not so sure. Attached to the thread was a single still image, allegedly from a hallway security cam. It showed the back of a woman walking out of the elevator, her shoulders hunched, her head turned, as if listening to something behind her. The image quality was low, but someone enhanced it and zoomed in on the elevator's reflective panel behind her. There was a face in the reflection, not hers, and the elevator was going down, even though no button had been pressed, even though the building only had 2 basement levels. And that's when new blueprints for the Hollow Creek residences surfaced. Blueprints the public had never seen. Ones that showed a sublevel that had never been disclosed in the original designs. A level marked only as B3. But here's the thing, Hollow Creek was built with only 2 underground floors. There was never supposed to be a B3, at least not on this side of reality. In early 2023, a cold case task force in El Paso received an anonymous tip, a cryptic message emailed directly to the lead detective on the Ruth Mendez file. The subject line read, "You're looking in the wrong direction. The elevator didn't fail. The man who built it did." Attached was a decades-old blueprint, similar to the original building plans, but older, hand-marked with pencil notations. In the bottom margin, initials, W.S. William Strode. William Strode had been a senior contractor on the Hollow Creek residences in the late 1970s. His name appeared in a handful of municipal records but disappeared after 1981. Digging deeper, the task force discovered that Strode had been investigated, though never charged, in connection with 2 missing persons cases during construction. Both women, both employees who vanished during late shifts. At the time, the building had been a hotel, and the disappearances were written off as unrelated. The key discovery came when they located Strode's nephew, who had inherited a remote cabin property near Cloudcroft, New Mexico. Stored in the attic were dozens of dusty boxes filled with notebooks, building plans, and VHS tapes. One of them was labeled Test 03HC Elevator. When agents viewed it, the footage showed a woman, likely one of the original missing employees, stepping into what looked like a prototype elevator. The doors shut, the camera flickered, A low hum filled the audio, and then nothing, just an empty shaft. When the screen cleared, the woman was gone. Federal investigators moved fast. With the new evidence and aided by recently declassified DARPA records, they uncovered a long-buried connection. William Strode had once worked on a classified military contract involving early experimental dimensional mapping, an attempt to test spatial manipulation through architectural design. He had tried to recreate the theory in his private work. Hollow Creek wasn't just a building, it was a machine. Using thermal scanning and structural sonar, engineers located a sealed vertical space beneath the elevator shaft. A hidden compartment, nearly 12 feet tall and undetectable from any floor. It had no door, only a hatch welded shut, marked with the number B3. When they breached the compartment, what they found changed everything. Inside were personal belongings, a red scarf, a cracked wristwatch frozen at 11:19, a leather purse containing a driver's license, Ruth Mendez. Alongside it, skeletal remains confirmed by DNA as Ruth's. The room was lined with soundproof insulation and wired with makeshift surveillance. Ruth hadn't vanished into thin air. She had been taken, held in a man-made chamber buried in the guts of the building, concealed by architectural illusion and silence. Justice, when it came, wasn't cinematic. There was no arrest. William Strode had died in 2003. But the truth was exposed. Hollow Creek was condemned, torn down within the year. Ruth's family finally buried her with a name, not a question mark. And the women who vanished in the 70s? Traces of their DNA were found too. The case of Ruth Mendez became more than an internet legend. It became a warning about obsession, about unchecked ambition, and about the shadows we build into the very structures we trust. The elevator that never moved was dismantled, piece by piece. And in its place, a plaque now stands, in memory of those lost in silence. May the truth always rise. Ruth Mendez was finally laid to rest, not as a question, but as an answer. Subscribe for more unsolved mysteries, bizarre cases, and stories that defy explanation.